So thank you both for joining me today. Before we get into the actual questions, I was just wondering whether or not you could introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. My name is Blair Russell, and I'm a virtual event producer at Crux.
Hi, my name is Nick Leavens. I am an executive producer at Crux.
Great, thank you. So what is Crux, I guess is the first question.
Sure. Crux is a cooperative of Black POC artists, developers, producers, and also me, who not either Black or POC. And we work in the XR space to center Black storytelling. We have a few different lines of business, content creation, virtual event production, public art installations, and we're now in the process of developing a talent development pipeline along with an educational pipeline.
Great. So just to sort of get through some of the jargon, first off, XR stands for extended reality.
Yes.
And what does that encompass?
Blair, do you want to do that one?
Sure. Yeah, so extended reality encompasses technology that spans obviously virtual reality, which is one area that we're really interested in, as well as augmented reality. But there's all other realities that fall under that term of XR.
Great, but it's virtual reality predominantly that you are working within.
We do.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, we do a little bit of everything. And one of our biggest projects right now is a massive AR project that is about the Black Panther Party, where we're interviewing Black Panther Party alum and putting them into, we're doing volumetric video capture, and they'll be put into a system that integrates conversational AI so that you can actually talk with the Black Party Panther alum and hear their stories through their voice. So it's all over the place. Yeah.
Exceptionally cool, incredibly complicated as well, I imagine.
Yeah. The technology that we're using was created by Plain Concepts in partnership with Microsoft, and it's actually the most advanced language AI, and we're going to be the first organization using it for this purpose. So we're really excited about it.
Amazing. And how
it's a different interview, right?
Yeah, I am so nerdy. I love all of this sort of technology side of things. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm getting the balance right. But how will an audience, once you've produced this work, how would they be engaging with that in an augmented reality setting? Because there isn't much commercial hardware out at the minute.
Right. You know, one of the core tenets of Crux, which we talk about, is accessibility. And the co-founder of Crux, Lauren Ruffin, will always say, you know, we all walk around with supercomputers in our pockets. So for everything that we do, especially one of the reasons why we're interested in augmented reality is that you can use your phone for it. But there's other ways in which an audience can engage with projects, particularly like iconic Black Panther, you know, public installations, organizational installations, things like that. So there's the nice things about when you create things like this, it's almost like a game created for the PS2, which then gets, you know, redone, redesigned, and released on the PS5. It works that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and the approach that we're taking with the development of the audience, the audience interaction component of that is most likely going to be web-based. So the next iteration of AR and VR will really move away from application development and be based on the web so that more people can access it through more different types of devices. So to that end, if you're on your laptop, your computer, there will very likely be Apple's entry into the XR space will likely be with a headset that is AR based rather than VR based. So, but the web-based platforms can have a wider range of adaptability whereas app-based headset experiences are pretty limited. So yeah, that's what it looks like for that and some of the other stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, and I guess actually, Blair, you sort of challenged what in my mind was a preconception around augmented reality, in that it has to exist in a headset. Knowing that you're partnered with Microsoft, I was thinking, okay, so you need a HoloLens to do this, but of course phones are probably the way in which most people are interacting with augmented reality right now. Things like Pokemon Go obviously is like probably the biggest example of augmented reality, I'd imagine.
Well,
something
the
like
biggest
that.
example is an Snapchat filter or an Instagram filter.
Even better,
Like
yeah.
that's a really common use of the technology where people use it every day and don't think about it at all. So
Yeah, no, I didn't until then. So yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm just going to read a line from your website and then ask some questions about it. But you say that live performance is at an impasse, that in a changing world burdened by exclusionary systems and emboldened by new technology, a seismic change can take place. I think there's quite a lot to unpack there, but could you first talk about the exclusionary systems and where they manifest?
yeah, well, live performance, especially the live performance industry, theater. Nick and I both have theater backgrounds. It was designed and created by white men and has been run by white men for thousands of years, we'll say, with theater at least. And those practices, these white supremacist practices, are just ingrained in the system. And we see it manifest all the time when we talk about audience. Who's the audience for this? What's our subscriber base? Who's going to buy a ticket? What shows are created? Who are the artists who are making the theater? I recently, did a little bit of a research project on just a team of creators, and I was just shocked to find out that, oh, this director, maybe not through any fault of their own, which had just always worked with the same people, which were white men. And it's probably because they came up through the same schools and went to the same training programs, which were probably run by white men. And so you start to see consciously or unconsciously these biases represented, and it's time we can change that. And if we can't change it within the institutions that exist, well, we have an opportunity to change live performance in XR spaces.
Yeah, and adding to what Blair said, there's also the idea of what is the well-made play. The myth of the well-made play is based on a white male aesthetic that has been developed over thousands of years. With XR being a fairly new technology and something that is very actively developing, specifically on the story side, our work to highlight, to infuse Black voices into the space will have a fundamental way of creating a foundation on which we build how good story is made in this space. So unlike any other medium prior, we're centering Black storytelling at the very foundation of this technology, which is just going to be game changing.
Yeah. So would it be fair to say then that you don't feel there has been progress in the traditional white aesthetic space to open up the medium to new voices, such that you have to seek out these new technologies? Or do you think there is still a role to play within that traditional medium?
I would say that Crux has made it very inviting to move to a different space. It's not to say that there isn't some level of progress happening, but it is so glacially paced that for me, and I think for a lot of artists, it's just been exciting to see that there's a world in which the company that is owned and run and organized and staffed with Black artists already exists. Great. I don't have to go back into these institutions and do all of the work because they don't want to and don't know how.
Coming from a theater background and 20 years of working as a director and a producer and a writer in theater, the unfortunate reality is that my white peers expect my Black peers to explain to them again and again how to do it right, but they don't take any action to do that. And it's very, very disappointing. There has definitely been progress, but that, like Blair is saying, that progress is glacial. It doesn't come with economic equality or leadership equality. And so what's the purpose if we're not able to empower our peers? It's really we're going through the gestures of progress to maintain a system of white supremacy. So what we're doing at Crux is breaking that. And with the projects that we've done in the Black Imagination series and elsewhere, we're paying our artists and the leaders of these projects, sometimes 10 or 20 times what they would make in the theater world, which isn't to say that we're paying people a ton of money. We're just paying them a fair salary, whereas they would not be making a fair salary or expected to work for free in the world of live performance.
Exactly.
Great. And to sort of build upon that, do you feel that these extended reality experiences are the only way in which those Black voices could have been heard? Like, would Crux have been able to set up a traditional theatre environment and still provide that experience? Or do you feel that the industry is shut down to that kind of movement?
Nick, there's probably something interesting to say about the origins of Crux and how that played out within the traditional performance spaces.
Yeah, so Crux was founded by Lauren Ruffin and Dafina McMillan. And Dafina comes from a pretty traditional theater background. What their original intent was to allow traditional Black theaters and performance organizations to create another access point for audience, which would be the XR space. And through that, the idea was that you would liberate the institutional performance space by providing another revenue generating system. And what happened in those first few years was there wasn't many people that were paying attention to it, both in the Black performance space and the rest of the Anglo-driven theater world. People weren't really listening. In typical theater fashion, folks are really steeped in tradition, and as much as the people that are artists and administrators at the institutions have progressive values, they sit and exist in these very conservative systems that are steeped in a certain way of doing things. So when I started working with Ruffin and Crux, we were migrating what the goals of the organization of Crux were kind of away from that, and the pandemic and subsequent BLM uprisings that happened last summer in response to the tragedies that continue to happen in the US and elsewhere started to drive people to this technology and focusing on Black storytelling, which is great. I don't think that there would have been that specified focus had that not happened, at least not that quickly. So, so backing up to answer your question, there have been a lot of attempts to create these systems, and there are a lot of amazing, successful companies that have done it in a traditional system. I think what we're hoping to do, and what we're actively doing in some cases, is to really break away from that, to allow global access points for artists in the Black diaspora, and that's starting to happen.
Great, thank you. So if I was to sort of summarize that, would it be fair to say that Crux started off as like treating XR as supplementary to that traditional storytelling, but has since transitioned away because you realized that it just wasn't working?
I mean, Crux was started to help others supplement. You know, Crux was always focused on the XR space, but it was about others being able to supplement their traditional storytelling. And now it's become the center of a lot of people's practices, a lot of organizations' practices. And Crux is a big part of that. We have a lot of partners who are coming from more traditional performance spaces who are making 30%, 50%. Obviously, you know, some organizations have said, you know, we're in this moment and we just have to do everything virtually. So that has really transformed how Crux interacts with the live performance industry.
Yeah, and I do want to swing back round to the somewhat unique circumstances I think we found ourselves in over the last year. But just to really break it down for the audience, could you talk to how the technology is democratizing live performance, like the specific examples in which the XR pieces you're producing are helping democratize theatre?
I think one way to answer that question is maybe this isn't the best way, but like how bad most of what is being produced by theaters is kind of shows that, yeah, anybody can produce in this space, right? So like if I made a Zoom play, it's probably as good as the Zoom play that the largest theatrical organizations are going to make. So I think what we've really focused on, which the organizations haven't quite captured, that we can do anything, we can create anything. It's not as costly as people imagine. It's oftentimes like not as expensive as doing a live performance, physical set building, costume building, all of that. But you also have the ability, and this is where the Black imagination comes in, to like tell the story you want to tell, because it is accessible to a global audience. You can't control it. It's on the internet. So there's no this excuse of, you know, who's right around us, what is our subscription base, what is our membership base, doesn't exist. And if those organizations can be global, then any creator can be global. And that's what's really, really exciting about it, you know. And that's what we tried to explain to people before the pandemic, and some people have learned. But I think there is a huge opportunity, because we want to be able to connect to audiences where they are, and that's what accessibility is, really.
Yeah, a specific example of that manifest in our work would be our first experiments with the Black Imagination series in alt space. And, you know, that was very early in Crux's working relationship with Blair. And Blair brought on 3 really incredible Black women to write plays. We cast casted 3 plays, and you know, our expectation was, you know, we invited friends and family. Our expectation was that we would have, you know, people in our orbit that were involved in the theater world that would come into the space to watch this. What actually happened was, it was that and a very, very robust, very active group of Black VR enthusiasts that were global, that found out about the projects through some of the articles that were written about what we were doing, and showed up with a great amount of enthusiasm. With the minimal effort that we put in sending out a press release, that first experiment with the Black Imagination series went viral, and we got a lot of subsequent work out of that. We built relationships with audience and artists all over the place. And what we proved, that Blair and I think assumed, but didn't think would happen so quickly, was that there is an audience that is really, really hungry for this type of content in this space. And that hit the myth of Black people don't like to interact with technology. And we shattered that pretty effectively and quickly.
Excellent, thank you. Swinging back to something you mentioned just then, Blair, around like art existing for art's sake on the internet, not having to focus on subscriptions or hits or that those sort of metric chasing ideas. That is traditionally how revenue is generated on the internet. So are you completely devoid of focusing on that, or is that something you kind of have to look at in order to make money, or are you generating revenue through other streams?
Are you asking specifically, are we just looking at the idea of building things and having people come as a...
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
you know, what's interesting is the question of cost. Like, how much does it cost to do these things? How much does it cost to create these things? And compared to what a traditional live performance organization is spending to create a product that maybe appeals to a very specific audience, or even like a big Broadway show, we can allow people to experiment and play and discover at a cost that is entirely reasonable, and going back to what Nick said, like fairly paying people for their time and their energy, and not really worry so much about, okay, well, how do we keep our subscribers? How do we generate this much? What's our budget? Blah, blah, blah. How does this fit into like the larger overall season budget? With, you know, there are so many different revenue opportunities with the things that we create. Black Imagination series, you know, through partnerships with other organizations, through original creations, and we're even looking into like, what will it mean over the next year to start selling tickets to events. And so that, you know, that is what's nice about technology, that it's not just one ticket that has to be sold. We're not an airline. Like, we can create something and then figure it out later. We can create it because it's fun, and then figure out how to monetize it later and generate revenue. And because Crux is a co-op of many different artists, and because we're working in so many spaces, we're really about balancing that. We're about balancing the work that we do with partners and the work that we do with other organizations with the work that we want to create ourselves. And having a group of people who are passionate about this allows us to decide, like, yeah, okay, we're gonna create this app today, or we're like, this is a great idea, let's just like go into it. And there's so many like amazing creative minds in this space with us. I mean, that's the best part of being in Crux, is like, we have team meetings, and it's like, it feels like normal now, but also like brilliant PhDs and like leaders in this space and artists, and I just like, I'm in love with everybody. It's crazy. That's what's exciting. We are allowed to do this. We're allowed to just explore. And just to say it again, it's not just titled Black Imagination for no reason. It's literally, when we talk to artists, it's like, yep, do whatever you want, because I'm not asking you to do this commission that's going to benefit me. I'm not asking you to create this show because it speaks to this audience. We discovered that the audience will come. We discovered that people are interested in what we're doing. So like, let's just keep creating things. Let's fail in a blaze of glory, because that's the opportunities that we should be given. That's the opportunities that these brilliant writers and directors and actors should be given.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I'm right in saying that Crux isn't just situated in one location. You are spread all across America or the world?
We are mostly in North America at the moment. We have people all over the US. We have people, obviously Blair is in Mexico. We have some folks that we work with in Canada. The reach of our partnerships with organizations is starting to extend, across oceans. We're excited to continue to explore that. Lauren and I were just talking about this yesterday, that it really is, the Black diaspora. So that is really the focus of Crux. And that is represented globally. So we'll continue exploring that.
Great. On the subject of partnerships, obviously you've got quite a few throughout all of your different projects. Do you feel that that is as a result of the space being still quite new, or do you think those partnerships will continue in the future as the space becomes more saturated, or are they long term?
So We're quite literally the only organization doing this specific work. So that definitely has something to do with it. There are other organizations that are focused on telling stories from people of color. We're the only organization that's explicitly focused on Black storytelling in the XR space, and also based like a cooperative. So I think that that makes our work particularly appealing. And the nature of, you know, having an artist-owned cooperative, again, you know, it's as people are more justice focused, I think that that's interesting to folks. I do think that there will be partnerships that continue for a number of reasons. There's a number of organizations that we've built strong working relationships with that don't have the capacity to do this type of work alone. And that's really in the structure of how Crux is built. Like we're looking for those types of relationships. And that's starting to evolve to also include artists that that have, you know, the ability to generate or to ideate around an idea, but might not have the capacity to actually create. So we're starting to move into, you know, executive producing more work. So that is continuing. I think that will, we're often getting approached by large tech companies. I don't know that we found the right working relationship, but we're still exploring it. Blair, I'm sure you have. You're in conversations all the time with folks.
I mean, partnerships are really important. I think one thing we should mention is, like, because of the way that Crux is built and designed and the people involved, it's not about just partnering with anyone, right? Like, they have to understand where we're coming from. They have to understand who we are, what our mission is. And so when Nick says not finding the right working relationship yet, it's a little bit about, okay, getting a sense of those organizations, seeing where they're coming from, seeing where they are in their process of dismantling their traditional practices around, you know, these really challenging. I think we often challenge people, I think, and we find ourselves having to interview our partners as much as they interview us to get a sense if we want to work with them. But there are so many conversations happening all the time in the performance space and other spaces. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And Crux can be invited into your space to continue the work that you've done, but Crux can't start the work for you. You know, we're not in, that's not why we're here, right? Our mission isn't to help performance organizations figure out their issues. Our mission is to help them get to the next level. So I can't wait to see what comes. I think there will be more and longer term partnerships. Everybody we've worked with that speaks to us in performance, like, really, you know, they really understand what we're doing here. And that's powerful. But one thing is, we kind of want other people to, like, get in here and do it as well, and not necessarily rely on us, like, figure it out with your own practice, kind of going back to why Crux was founded. Like, I hope more organizations believe, like, we should have our own team of people in the XR space just working on that. That would be great. If every theater became a media company and was like, let's have a team devoted to VR and XR, I would be thrilled. That's what I wanted. Even before I found Crux, I was like, oh, every theater should be doing this. And they were like, no, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. And, but now it's different. Things changed. So here we are. We hope that there's many more partnerships and that they continue to grow.
Yeah. Things have definitely changed, especially in the last year. I think this is the first time we're going to mention COVID-19 in this call, which is nice, just to not have to mention it constantly. But obviously it has forced all previously live performance to go online in one way or another. How have you seen the space change and adapt to that transition over the past year? And do you evaluate it as being successful overall, or do you feel like some people have done better than others?
I think that you hit it on the head there. I think that there's a decision placed in front of organizations, and that's, do you adapt or do you wait? And from what we're seeing, very few organizations are actually adapting. They're kind of putting in measures in place that will allow them to get by for like the year and a half, 2 years that they're going to be under the influence of COVID. Those institutions that are adapting are implementing radical change across the board. And we have the pleasure to collaborate with a few of those institutions. We're working with the Actors Theater of Louisville right now on developing 2 pieces in XR that are radically different. And it's changing how their staff approaches the work. And they're having very challenging conversations about how to make that happen. Which, comes down to like the nuts and bolts of like, how do you staff the design efforts behind, this project? And what comes out on the other end of that is exponential audience access and revenue generation. We're working with New York Live Arts, which is a dance company based here in New York that has a national and global reach, Bill T. Jones's company. And again, Blair worked with them to build a platform that audience can go into from around the world. And so people are getting to not only see the work, but interact with each other and network. It's really been beautiful to see those adaptations. They are the exception, not the rule. And what those companies are doing will have they'll have the ability to continue those efforts in a space that the rest of the live performance industry is not accessing. So they'll be light years ahead.
I mean, Crux has not worked with an organization whose sole solution was like, let's do a virtual play, right? Like that's not the space that we've been operating in at all. We've been talking to companies who are like, what is next? What is more? The virtual play, the Zoom play, it's been a Band-Aid, and that's all. And that's not really interesting to us because we're thinking longer term. We're thinking about the future of this part of the industry.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're welcoming more competition into the space overall. You want more people to enter. Do you have any concerns around those traditional theatre practices, the white Anglo-centric practices, coming into this quite liberated space at the moment and then dominating it? Or do you think there is room for everybody in this new market?
Why Crux exists, right? I mean, we're trying to prevent that. I mean, let's not say that it doesn't already exist, but XR is still in its infancy. There's still opportunity to figure out how it's going to be built and who the leaders are going to be. And so if we keep pushing and keep challenging and keep making our voices heard, we hope that it won't look like the theater or film and television or everything else. We hope it'll be different.
The XR space is fairly dominated by, white Anglo people that are technicians, engineers. And the opportunity that Crux has is because it's so tech-based, there's not much story there. So there's a lot of things that are being created that are transactional, international, that are like, okay, sure. We're infusing good storytelling, unique storytelling into the space. And so that's another reason why Crux and our network of artists is a step ahead, or at least coming into the space with a lot to say.
Yeah, I mean, that is true of the tech industry as a whole, not just that it's white dominated, but there is a lack almost of humanity. It's very engineering, code for code's sake, follow the algorithm, and there's like no focus on the humanity behind those and how that is how that changes society's interactions with one another. There doesn't seem to have been that much consideration around that, at least in the last like 10 years of technology development. There's no question attached to that. It's more just hypothesizing that we need more artists in this space, you know.
Yes.
So talking about art, and let's move over to some of your projects. We got in touch, or we were put in touch with one another because of Mozilla Festival. This is your first year at Mozilla Festival, which is all being hosted virtually. Could you tell us first, how did you get involved in the festival?
Do you want me to do that, Blair? Or do you want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, right. We sort of described it a little bit, but yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah. So we were connected with or recommended to the Mozilla producing team by Lisa Osborne at Black Public Media. Lisa has a long relationship working with us, and we work with Black Public Media on a few other projects, but she really loved the first experiment with Black Imagination series and thought it would be a good fit for MozFest. And so Blair and I started putting together a team once we were introduced to the producers over there. We're really excited about this project that we're starting to build.
So, I mean, we haven't actually properly addressed it yet, but could you tell us what this project is?
So, yeah, we've been really lucky to partner with 4 artists, 2 performers, a writer, and a director, and they are creating this beautiful world. The title of the piece, I guess, we're still figuring out the language around this stuff, but it's Battle of the Flowbots. Takes place on planet Nubian, where the Flowbots are gathering for a drop the mic style rap battle. That would be Flowbot Hendrix and Flowbot Oprah. And they're also mother and son, just to add a backstory to it. It's going to be this beautiful virtual reality based rap battle in which the audience becomes, you know, both the judges and engages with these it's a part of an extended universe, the Brobot universe. And so this is just like one piece of that, which is also gorgeous. Like it's been performed as a web series. It's been, you know, there's albums, it's had live performances in New York and Brooklyn, and like to see that theater artists like Darian, our writer, can transform their pieces and like create a new part of this universe in virtual reality is amazing. So we are excited to bring the Flowbots to virtual reality. I mean, Nick can attest to this, but like we were sort of like, okay, like do whatever you want. Like Nick knew Darian and invited him to be a part of this. And we're like, you know, tell us in a couple days what you're thinking. And he came back with this like whole plan around this amazing piece. And we were floored. I mean, I was just like smiling from ear to ear, reading it and imagining it, and the world that they're able to build. Like, this is imagination. Like, this is not asking people, I mean, a little bit passionate here. This is not asking people in this moment to like write a play because you're a Black artist about like civil rights and this. And I'm just like, that, like, who wants to do that? Or like, if you want to do that, great. But like, we're not interested in that right now. We're interested in like whatever you want to write. Like, even the practice of people still going out and commissioning people to like help their organization talk about how progressive they are is so backwards. And this is the opposite of that. This is like fun and exciting and funny, and I can't wait. Yeah.
Darian is so creative in what he's made, and I met him at a film festival in Toronto, where his first iteration of Brobot Johnson, which was, you know, the first thing put it into the world, I think, of the Brobot Flowbot world, as a web series. It was just like it was so different than anything that exists that I've ever seen before, and it's just pure joy. And the music that he makes is incredible, and he's continued to iterate on that. And this is like such a joyful next step of that universe. It's just so fun. Like every time we get to in the room with there, it's just like, it's just so much fun. It's really gorgeous. It's really gorgeous work.
That sounds amazing. I just personally, I'm excited about the term brobot as its own thing. Is just quality in its own right. So how does an audience at MozFest engage with Battle of the Flowbots? Like, what are the actual nuts and bolts of it?
Yeah, so we'll have sort of two different types of audiences. And again, speaking to accessibility, there will be an audience who can join us in virtual reality. If they have an HMD, they can come into virtual reality and be in the space and be a part of this Flowbot audience. It's also accessible by desktop. So there will be a component where people who will be joining us on the Mozilla Hubs platform, which is what we're using. So it's nice to have that connection between the MozFest and Mozilla Hubs platform and have the expertise of those teams. And that's accessible in headset. That's also accessible by desktop. And there will probably be a streaming component as well for people who just want to sit back and observe. So we'll have these many options for people to engage. And that's, again, really exciting. We don't know how people want to engage. We'll be excited to see how all of this works. And that's the fun of Black Imagination, I think.
Wonderful. I mean, yeah, you've sort of preempted the question I was going to ask around accessibility and how do you actually like, obviously this is a sphere that is much more open to creatives, but in terms of like an audience, how does an audience actually access that when you've got such vastly different accesses to technology, but being able to provide so many different mediums which an audience can engage with is just really exciting. It's yeah.
And I'd say, just to put a little tag on that accessibility question, it's something that we're constantly thinking of and trying to address in all of the work that we do. With the work that we're doing in partnership with others and on our own, whatever platform we're on, we're faced with the question of how are people able to access this, which brings up a lot of questions. It's not just what devices people have, it's how strong is their internet. It's do people have disabilities that would prevent them from seeing or hearing or physically accessing this? And some of the work that we've done has changed how platforms are developing. We're working with the OEA platform for a project that we're doing with the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in San Francisco. And Jose Rosario, who's our genius environmental designer, and we put on like nearly every project because he's quite literally a genius. We started asking a lot of really tough questions of OEA around accessibility, and they've adapted their platform. And that is purely in response to the questions around visual and hearing impairments that we've brought up with them. So I don't think a lot of other organizations are asking those types of questions. And I think that Crux's unique perspective lends it to doing that type of work.
Great, thank you. Swinging back around quickly to Battle of the Flowbots, just to sort of try and wrap that up. What was the time frame in terms of creating this? Obviously, you had like an existing universe which you could sort of pull lore from, so to speak. But like in terms of actually writing and producing and creating this work, would you say the time frames were longer or shorter than perhaps a traditional play?
They are very short. Still in process, which is what the fun of it. Again, coming from that theater background, I always have to take a step back and be like, what we're doing is radical and revolutionary. And oftentimes like you just had to say yes to things. And this opportunity came with not a lot of time for a virtual space, like zero time if this was to be traditional. But that's what's fun. Like, let's do it. Let's figure it out. Let's have fun. Let's, again, like fail in a blaze of glory, or just be like magical and successful and crazy. And so it's been short, but when you invite the right people in, people have the right energy and the right mindset, like Darian, like Carmen, our director, and our two performers, they're game. They're just going to say like, yep, let's do it. Let's have fun. This is all new. Like, what we have no expectations of people because it's all new. And that's why we're willing to do these crazy things.
I love the conversation that came up. Carmen, our director, asked, "Can we put a roller coaster in the space?" And we're like, and so we're figuring out like, can we put a roller coaster in the space? Yeah, and Jonathan Williams, who is our environmental designer on this project, he's so game. So the three of them, you know, Carmen, the director, Darian, the writer, and Jonathan, are collaborating in this beautiful way to figure out how quickly we can do these magical, wonderful things that are coming out of their brains. It's really, really fun.
It sounds amazing, and like it just opens up so many doors and possibilities. I last year, just before COVID hit, the last public event I actually went to was a space dedicated to exploring how extended reality could start to be integrated into the arts. And there was this like this very short VR demo where you had the headset, but then they sat you in a frame that was synced up to the video, and it was like a roller coaster going round the Gherkin in London. And it was just a really wild merging of two technologies. And even though in your brain, you know, you are sat in the Tate Modern in like this basically wooden box that act like you still felt your stomach churning, you still felt sick as you did those loops and everything else. And it just it's an incredibly immersive and I think a really rich opportunity to provide those new experiences for people. Really great. So I have just a couple more questions, and I really want to swing back to the Black Lives Matter movement. Over the last year, we've obviously seen some really horrendous things, but also some quite encouraging and inspiring acts and movements around that. How do you feel that conversation has influenced your work? Has it impacted the way you approach anything, or do you feel that you were already making the right steps in terms of that discussion?
So I joined Crux last summer, and I think one of the reasons why I felt just so ready to join Crux and that it was the space for me is because the conversations didn't need to happen. It's built into the foundation of the organization. It is ingrained in all of the people who are part of the co-op. You know, I'm working with people who are passionate civically, they're passionate about their work, they're passionate about their lives, they're passionate about their hobbies. And so we haven't, I wouldn't say that we've necessarily had to change our practices or change our work, but it's obviously being in this space, being in the space of COVID and having more people to partner with, we've seen that other people have been changing the ways that they, their practices, the ways that they work. And that's really important for us to engage with them. So, you know, I can't deny that it's been nice to be in a space where all of that already existed before I came. Again, like just, we're not the ones who have to do the work. You guys do the work. We'll talk to you. We continue to have conversations all the time. This is core to our mission. It's core to every single person in the co-op. So it's just it's a part of the environment, and it's a part of really the culture of this organization.
Yeah. So I got involved with the organization prior to the very, the very public, movements that started to happen last summer. And the reason that I got interested in Crux, which I believe was like in the very beginning of 2019, end of 2018, was because of the economic model that they were building. I'm a geek for social justice in institutional systems, and the idea of building an economic model specifically to liberate Black and brown artists was really, really exciting to me, and it spoke to a lot of the work that I've done in the past. That said, as the white dude in the institution, you know, there's a lot of questions that I'm constantly asking myself that are really tough questions that I think that peers of mine that are white people leading institutions might be able to get away with not asking themselves. And what I find really wonderful about working with Blair and my other peers at Crux is it's a very welcoming space to be yourself. And you know, I've made a commitment to continue to make mistakes boldly, you know, and then to adapt when that happens. And I think that the work that Crux does with our partners encourages those partners to do the same. And because we self-select with who we work with, those people are equally adaptive, which is great. The one last thing I'll say about this, and because we had a huge influx of staff last summer, and at the end of last summer, Blair came, he was one of the early folks that came in with us. I've had a lot of one-on-one conversations with our people that have come out of these oppressive systems of film, theater, the institutional art world. And they'll say, this doesn't feel real. The working environment that we've created doesn't feel real because it's so special to this place. And it really is. It's a completely unique environment. And we're lucky to have brought in some of the most talented people that are working in the space. So it's a blessing every day. I'm very thankful to be working with Blair and the rest of the team.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm really conscious of time, so I'm gonna 3 more questions, if that is all right with you. Just to build off the back of what you just said there, Nick, how do you think other organizations can create a more welcoming, open culture? Like, are there things that you can very clearly state, you should be doing this, this, and this to improve your diversity? And
yes, absolutely. Awesome. Yes. Okay, so I a few years ago I did a lot of work in Australia, and Australians theater world is very, very male director driven, and of their major institutions there's one female artistic director. And I was sitting down with one of their a literary manager at a company. He's moaning the challenges of hiring female directors. And I said, you know what the secret of hiring a female director is? He said, what? I said, you just do it. Like, that's the solution here. You hire Black and brown people, you hire women, you put them in leadership positions. The most direct line to solving inequality is not hiring a diversity officer. It is taking a step back as a white person and relinquishing your power to someone else who deserves it. And the myth that there aren't talented people out there, it is just a myth. The creativity that exists in our networks it astounds me every day. It's happening while still under the thumb of oppression.
Great, thank you. Blair, anything to add to that?
That's my answer every day. It's like, I still have a hand in theater and a lot of spaces, and I'm still a part of a lot of conversations, and I can sit through an hour-long meeting, but it's always like, just do it. Like, just hire the person. Hire one person and they'll help you hire another person. If you don't, I mean, I can say that if you are trying to do this work and you literally find yourself unable to find somebody, then you need to look inward and be like, oh, I am not equipped to lead an organization. So if you can't do the work, if it's that hard, then you need to be asking bigger questions.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, nothing to expand on that really. Just do it. So looking forward, next 3 years, next 5 years, what are the technologies that have you really excited? What developments are you seeing in the space that you are really enthusiastic to try and integrate more into your work?
I mean, I'm really interested in these new technologies and augmented reality. You know, Nick brought up like Apple getting into the space with a headset-based augmented reality tool. You know, the virtual reality headsets have become much cheaper and much more accessible to people, and I think we'll start to see that be like having a video game console or a cell phone or, you know, gaming computer. And I really think that augmented reality needs to go in that direction, because I think it'll be adopted on a larger scale and used more regularly by people. Virtual reality is still a big ask, and so how can we make augmented reality central to our lives, like having a cell phone? You know, it has augmented our reality, right? So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, same. I think that there's an exciting moment that's about to happen where we mix what we think of as virtual reality and augmented reality, and start to, you know, integrate things like artificial intelligence in world building, so that you can be in your apartment, your home, outside. You have your small augmented reality glasses on, and the world around you changes. It's gamified in a way that that we're not able to do right now, where you don't have to hold a phone. I think that that'll be really cool, and it'll really allow a completely new level of storytelling to happen. And I think that that's like, Blair and I get nerdy about the storytelling aspects over the gamification aspects, or the storytelling of game, you know, like how that can be infused in gamification. So that's, I'm really looking forward to that.
So it's talking a world where Google Glass had succeeded rather than just sort of killed in the way that Google does with everything. That you know,
Exactly.
like Daydream, yeah. Where has Daydream now? That they were so early in the space and Google Cardboard, and then they just sort of went nah. But you think that that is going to develop and continue developing, whether or not it's with Google, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, the size of computing has gotten a lot smaller. All these systems have become consumer grade. A lot of the movement into consumer grade products has happened really because of COVID. You know, the technology was heading in a very different direction a year ago, because there wasn't that much consumer interest, and it was being, you know, the AR and VR tools looked like they were being used more for commercial and industrial use. So that has changed, and I think it's allowed larger companies like Apple to think of, you know, what's going to happen 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road that we need to anticipate. And we're there.
Yeah. So COVID has just acted as an accelerant for this technology, really. Cool. So last question, it's very open-ended, but is there anything you think I haven't spoken about that you really want to flag or highlight at this point?
No, I mean, we actually covered it all. We've done a really good job. You know, I just want to say again, like we're so excited to be exploring in this space with the artists that we're working with the people that we're working with the partners that we are finding. And Crux is about looking forward and building the foundation for a really strong future in this space. And that's what we want to do. And that's what Black Imagination is about.
+1 to that, Blair. And we encourage artists and institutions to contact us. And people can find out more information about us at crux.black and imagination.black. and we like to be a resource for people, and are always excited to hear from collaborators and potential collaborators.
Awesome, thank you. I also love how nerdy +1 is. You don't hear that anymore. It's like, man, that is old school internet parlance. Finally, where can people find yourselves online as well?
Yeah, you can definitely find us through where Nick said, crux.black, imagination.black. I'm on all of the socials. I even hide out on TikTok. I don't post anything. But if you look me up at BA Russell 4, you'll find me everywhere.
I've taken myself off of some social platforms. Like, I won't Twitter anymore. But I'm on VR platforms as Sporadic Stash, and find me on Instagram at Leavens, and just Google my name and my website comes up, and you can watch things I made.
So modest. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure talking to both of you.
Thanks, Tom. Really, really great talking to you.